Remember back in the small order solution section of this video, I talked about a huge chronological, that is one step after another process that goes all the way through the business. And it has to do with just order fulfillment out of the warehouse. First, buyers have to buy the stuff, then it has to be received, the receiving dock, then it has to be put away, then order entry happens, and that creates pick, fulfillment, packing, shipping, then we bill the customer, etc. If you look at the little ABCD diagram on the title slide of this module, the question was asked, who's the quarterback for this process that threads its way through everybody in the operation, and who's measuring the daily service output metrics for the process? There is no person doing that in most distribution companies right now. As a result, you do see tension between departments. Each department tends to focus on themselves, their problems, and they want to optimize their world the way they know it. So you'll see tension between the purchasing people and the receiving dock people. You'll see tension between the receiving dock people and the inside sales saying, would you get the stuff that arrived yesterday in the computer, because we have customers who want the stuff right now, otherwise I'm going to run out there and put it in a trunk and drive it out to the customer anyway, type of thing. And then when people put it away, if it's put away poorly, customer and warehouse pickers come into the inside sales and say, I'm sorry, but even though the computer says we have it, we don't. It's not there. It is. It's just put in the wrong place. The guy wasn't looking in the correct place or whatever. So there's tension between inside sales and warehouse pickers, etc. There's tension between every department. And you start to realize, wait, and then outside salespeople are upset with everybody, because service snafus are happening. So what we need is somebody to monitor the whole process and try to figure out how to rethink the process as it goes across department boundaries, making these processes more user-friendly for both the employees in all the departments as well as the customers themselves. So we need a sort of a new part-time creature, which I'm going to call a service manager. Now, this person might typically be sort of a senior combat-tested inside salesperson who we're now going to give, move their desk basically between inside sales and the hallway going out to the warehouse, because they're going to be between those two places all the time. They still may take overflow calls for inside sales, but we're going to give them, 50, 60, 70% of their time is going to be allocated to the new task of gathering and posting service numbers every day. If there's a service breakdown, they're the go-to person, try to figure out where in the process the failure point was, or the bottleneck was, or whatever. And all along, they're going to rethink the total processes that are threading their way through this. And later on, there are modules in Section 5 on the power of systems and an elaborate checklist of how a group of people can start to rethink their systems. But a big issue will be how we manage surge management. And there are two kinds of surge management. First of all, there's the 3 truckloads that arrive of A+ stuff at the dock one afternoon, and we want to get it same-day receiving. And the other big surge is all the phones light up, and for some reason a lot of customers want to call late in the day and want the stuff right away, and we have 3 people out with the flu. So somehow it isn't all going to happen. How do we take care of those surges so the customers always get consistent service? If you think about it, UPS and FedEx somehow take care of 10 times the packages 2, 3, 4 days before Christmas than they do in the middle of August. So if they can do it, we can do it. Surge management is key. Now, right away, there are going to be some questions about, this new creature. Like, for example, well, wait a minute. We're a lean, mean operation. Business stinks. We're not making any money right now. We can't spend the money on this kind of guy. Well, first of all, you have to look at the long-term return on investment and on an act of faith, forward invest in it. But secondly, I think that you can start to finance a lot of these proactive investments in service excellence from the slack that you pick up from the small order solution, zero errors, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and fill rate productivity economics, which we've been touching upon. And then this job will over time self-liquidate, because initially a lot of time has to be spent on sort of curing old problems, but as you do that, the errors drop, and the job starts to shrink dramatically. Not that there won't always be some residual continuous improvement opportunity for service managers. Also, people immediately get into power politics. Well, wait a minute. If this guy or gal is going to be the quarterback for this entire process, does that mean everybody in the process, all those little boxes, like the warehouse manager is supposed to report to the service manager? People get very turf conscious, and where are loyalties and allegiances? I think the best way to look at this is to say, departments continue to be departments, but when it comes to the process that cuts through departments, everybody has to be loyal to the final output numbers, the service metrics. Those are our North Stars. And we have to do whatever we have to as a team, as a process team, to make that happen. So the service manager isn't somebody who's hiring and firing and necessarily doing day in, day out coaching and that kind of stuff. That still is done by traditional, hierarchy, sort of structure. But everybody, in a sense, has to respond to the service manager's service metric, imperatives. And the service manager, in a sense, reports to customers, because if the customers have any problems at all, this is the go-to person. We're not going to call somebody in accounting who's going to issue a credit that gets over, to another department. It's going to go right to the production line, the order fulfillment where the error was blown for the heroic recovery, etc. Now, what kind of skills does this person have to have? Well, most of these skills at most companies have been untapped and unknown. And part of what this video is going to do is provide a lot of information, education as to what has to be done and how it needs to be done. But beyond that, there's no other solution but to get out there and try, fall on your face, get up and do it again, and continue to improve. So here are a few comments on surge management and cross-training. We've talked about the surges at receiving and the surges for incoming orders. The key way to solve this, of course, is through cross-training. So if we have a huge surge in the warehouse, lots of people in the warehouse are cross-trained to go over there and flawlessly, perfectly do the order receiving process so you can gang tackle the problem. If you think in terms of inside sales, if a huge surge of orders comes through inside sales, it's kind of like a pig going through a python. Can the inside sales capacity expand to sort of engorge, take in the pig? But where are you going to get the extra people to do it? And the answer is they're going to come from down the line or off the process line. So a buyer could take an overflow call. An outside sales person could be scheduled in during busy times to take overflow. Warehouse people could take care of orders if customers are calling in, they know what they want with code numbers, etc. If the pig then gets out to the warehouse, there are not enough people to pick all the orders, process all the orders, to get them on trucks, then people in the office could be scheduled to go out there and do those jobs if they're cross-trained. Now, I know right away people will say, this is impossible, you don't understand, we can't learn each other's jobs, etc. And again, I'm going to quote Henry Ford, who said, if you think you can or you can't, you're right. And I'm here to tell you that I've been involved in enough distribution businesses where we've made this work that you can make it work. There are no magic acts, and actually, there's a way to go about it. So if, for starters, you just start to monitor activity rates as far as order fulfillment, you'll start to see natural patterns. For example, at one client, 50% of all the orders were coming in the afternoon between 3 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And yet they sort of wanted to have 4 people on the inside sales desk at this one branch all day long. And most of these guys weren't doing much in the morning, but they were all busy as could be and dropping the ball and not giving everybody good service and leaving good customers on hold in the afternoon. I said, this is crazy. We need to rebalance these jobs. We need to have fewer people earlier in the day and more people later on. We have to cross-train for overflow. And they all hemmed and hawed and so forth, but it got done. The idea that these people then would go out in the warehouse and fill orders was anathema. And I said, get over it. The North Star says we have to improve our ecosystem. We have to give the customers what they want if we want to grow faster, make more dough, and fulfill your wishes. And they were like, yeah. I said, can you think of anything else? They said, no. So let's go. And we forged ahead. And what we found is that not every day is a surge. They only happen periodically, and if we monitor the activity rate, we can anticipate if a surge hits at a certain time in inside sales, we know the surge is going to hit the warehouse a half an hour, 45 minutes later, so people can be notified or be on call that if surges do happen, they may have to be prepared to go in the warehouse. So every Tuesday, purchasing people, a purchasing person may come in blue jeans and sneakers because they know that that's their day to be in the warehouse pulling, processing orders if a surge should materialize. and they will know by 4 o'clock whether to activate their contingency plan for going home at a normal time or having somebody else pick their kid up at daycare, because they're going to be in the warehouse pulling orders. Now you might think, well, wait a minute, who's going to organize their whole life around the customer's needs? And the answer is, well, if you hire the right employees and you pay the most to get the most, expect the most, and this is the deal up front, people figure it out, and they're happy to do it because they realize what's in it for them and why it is serving the customer and why it does give us a differentiation edge, etc. So when you get the normal pushback, don't want to, can't do it, got to go home every night at 5, it's a magic act doing this job, etc., you have to look at the North Star and say, these are the service metrics, this is what our niche wants, this is how we're going to make an issue and an edge, this is what's in it for everybody in the long run. Can you think of a next best alternative? And some people can say, well, no, I can't, but I'm not. In that case, you may have to say, well, you have to find another job, preferably at a monopoly service company, where you can just show up and do exactly one thing all day at the same pace. You don't go faster, you don't go slower, and you quit right there at 4:30. And if you give customers lousy service, it's too bad, because they have to keep coming back to you anyway because you're the motor vehicle department and there's no other place to go to, for example. So you have to realize if you don't do this, someone else is watching this video or is going to figure this out, and they're going to eat your lunch. So those are things to consider. Now, when it comes to surge implementation lessons, if you have to cross-train people, you need to set up what I call a learn and earn certification program, which we'll talk about in a couple more modules. And if productivity is going to go up, in theory, we can raise wages. And the question is, well, what do you do first? Do you learn and wait for productivity to go up and then give wage increases? Or do you learn and simultaneously give wage increases, assuming productivity is going to come along? What comes first? You know, it varies. My bias is to put big charts on the wall, create big learn and earn certification programs, and when somebody has rotated through a job, they've mastered it, they've passed tests and so forth, I give them a merit raise right in the spot. So they perceive that they earned that. Whether the productivity has already come or will come or whatever, that's, I'm not going to worry about it. Now, what's going to happen is there's going to be pushback as far as, well, I'm afraid I might not be able to learn it, or I don't know that I like these new hours. But you have to put that in a balance and say, well, yeah, but on the other side of the balance scale, I'm going to have high wages, I'm going to have pride, I'm going to have job security, job growth, I'll always be busy making things happen for customers who I believe in and so forth. So as hearts, minds, and wallets all start to get in sync, it's a very compelling issue, and it tends to offset any sort of pushback concerns people have. So the service manager is going to be the quarterback, and it's going to be vital to making a number of programs, zero errors, on-time delivery, learn and earn certification happen. They, by rethinking the processes, are going to be a key character as far as helping to sync heart, mind, and wallets for all the frontliners involved in the service processes. And now we're going to look in the next 3 modules at how the service manager is going to play a role and make quick and dirty things happen for zero errors, on-time delivery, and heroic recoveries. Thanks. Who out there in viewer land remembers the original tagline from Federal Express? And it went something like, when you absolutely positively need it, da-da-da-da-da type of thing. And initially they had an unconditional guarantee that if it didn't get there when it was supposed to, it was for free. And of course they do heroic recovery to track it and find it. They don't promote that much anymore, although they don't promote the unconditional guarantee very much anymore, but they still do it, and they still would do it for free if there was a problem. Think about in your business, everybody says we have good service. How many people put their money where their mouth is and says, if we make a mistake of these types, we unconditionally guarantee that that's not going to happen. If it does, we're going to pay you serious money to offset some of your hassle expense. Where do you have $50, $100, a credit, some mechanism to deliver extra value to you besides, of course, doing the heroic recovery. That sort of puts teeth into what you're doing, and it's a vision worth pursuing, I believe. In this section, we're going to talk about how we can achieve quick and dirty basic service brilliance. We're not going to do Baldrige Award, Six Sigma, quality control stuff. That's over-engineered and not appropriate for a small distribution location. We've got to come up with something that works. But we do want to try to figure out if we can get to 0 errors. It's the low-cost way of doing something. It's the high morale way of doing something because, in the absence of errors, we feel good, but when there are errors, people get blamed and screamed at and whatever, and our morale goes down. And it's the high service value way of going also. And it takes really kind of what might be perceived as ordinary jobs and elevates them to a science and makes us certifiably the best with bragging rights. What we have to do, I think, is to get a quick, rough fix on how many errors we currently make for every 1,000 line items we process, and try to figure out how to get to some promotable level of errors. I would say within most distribution companies at the distribution center level, 20 to 70 errors per 1,000 is pretty typical. 20 per 1,000 would be good, 70 per 1,000 would be bad. But we would like to get to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 errors per 1,000 is where we need to be excellent or distinctive. So to quickly assess or estimate what our error rate is, let's look at this next slide. If we took transactions per month, and they're 2,000, for the average IDA distributor that reported his numbers to the IDA profit report, and there may be 2.2 line items per invoice, we'd say, all right, there's 4,400 line items we're processing a month out of a given distribution center. If you look at the number of credits that you issue, usually when there's a mistake, we commemorate it by writing a credit. So we look at the number of credits we issued for the month and subtract out customers' voluntary return. Sometimes customers just say, I don't need this, would you take it back? And we also could take out manufacturer defects because those are the 2 main categories of credits that aren't our problems. So we take out customer returns and defects, and maybe we're left with 100 credits that is an approximation of error events. So at the bottom you see if we take 100 divided by 4,400, we come up with 23 mistakes per 1,000 line items, which is this hypothetical case example. That would be good. Now, what we need to do is take this big problem of errors and break it into departmental categories and then deal with the problems at a departmental level. As we do this and break the big thing into little opportunities, we always want to be looking at systems as part of the solution, 3 different ways. First of all, we can say, all right, let's flowchart the system that's threading its way through as far as paperwork, prompting, things in the computer that make us ask certain things or keep us from making mistakes. Goof-proofing things is always good. But we also have systems for how we hire the right aptitude of person for a job, and we also have systems for how we educate them to do that job well. Let's face it, if there is a job that takes enormous attention to detail, I want somebody who has enormous attention to detail. If they can't see Mack trucks coming down the road, the big picture, I don't care. That's not what their mind is wired for. There are all kinds of minds out there, and I want to find the kind of mind that has really got a great aptitude for doing that particular job. Also, every time we look at these error sources, we realize the need for cross-training. Because when people are sick or on vacation, or there's a surge, and other people try to hop in to another area and help where they haven't been before, errors go up. So if we want to have 0 errors and 100% on-time delivery, we have to have perfectly, flawlessly cross-trained, interchangeable people. Otherwise, error rates will go up. Now, the way to break the big problem into small problems is to go take the last 200 credits that you've issued over the last X months and just get a group of 2, 3, 4 people sitting around and try to categorize them quick and dirty. And the way we're going to categorize them is by 2 dimensions. One is think of a process. The customer does something that causes an error. So they're customer-caused credits. The customer admits they made a mistake. The customer wants to return stuff. The customer says, it's defective or other. So maybe we have, 2 or 3 customer codes, 11, 12, 13. The customer could phone inside sales. So now we move to Series 2. Inside sales people could write down the wrong item, the wrong price, the wrong something. So we have codes 21, 2, 3, and always there's kind of 24, which is other. If it isn't the first 3 major ways an inside salesperson can make a mistake, it's miscellaneous. Then it goes to data entry, and data entry can make errors 31, 32, 33. Then it goes to warehouse, and warehouse picking can make 41, 42, 43. Take that kind of approach. What you're going to come up with is about 12 to 18 codes. So now you look at these credits and you just try to guess where you think they're coming from, give them a code, make a copy, put it in a folder, and so you've got 12 to 18 folders, and when you finish the 200, you go look for the fat folders and think, okay, here's our biggest opportunity. Now you're going to make wrong guesses. You're going to say, I assigned that to inside sales wrong item, when in fact it could have been somebody else, but that's okay. Your wrong guesses cancel one another, and what we're looking for is just ballpark estimates of where our biggest initial opportunities are. So then we go after those areas. For example, maybe the biggest area is it was mispriced. And as you go then look at all of the copies of credits that are mispriced, then you'll find that 4, 5, 6 of the credits all came from one customer. And you start to ask your questions, well, what's going on? You come up with your theories. You say, you know what? I think, and I've put one thing is to ask 5 whys. Why is this happening? Oh, because maybe this problem. Really? Well, why'd that happen? And you keep digging down to the point you say, well, the process is flawed. We have the wrong person, or we have the right person, but they didn't get enough training. And for example, when it gets to mispricing, and you see that 5 of these errors came from one customer very quickly, you start to realize, you know what I think happened? We cut a deal with that customer and said, from now on, you get a contract price. They immediately started phoning orders in, but we did not get the new contract price into the customer master file. So we need a system where we tell the customer, this is what we're going to do, but it won't work until you get a fax or an email or a phone call saying, all right, it's turned on, it's good to go. Otherwise, we have this problem that happens. So let's review the process by which we grant a contract deal to a customer, but make sure that on the process it's goof-proof, idiot-proof as far as those new contract prices are in the computer before we even tell the customer he's got it, because then he's going to want to do it and expect new prices, as an example. So that's what we have to do, is sort of build this quick and dirty kind of database of stuff that's going on. Now, we can do other credit rankings to get other kind of perspectives on the problem. One would be to sort credits by customer, if you could do that. Sometimes it's as simple as just doing a dump of all credits for a period of time, if you can, by sales territory even, because you can just go down the customer name column and see that each salesman has 1, 2, 3 customers where their name pops up a lot. And that allows you to zero in on a customer-centric kind of problem. Later on, in a couple modules, we'll look a little bit deeper at what I call the customer the Rascal ranking report, where if you can set up your database to create a ranking report where you are ranking the number of credits you issue to a customer on an annual basis divided by the number of transactions, and sort from high to low, and find somebody who has 49 credits for 100 transactions, and then you check the code and find out that every one of those credits, or a lot of them, are you shipped me short, you realize you found a thief, a guy who orders 4 items and says, where's the 5th item? Well, where's the 5th item? Or, orders 4 items and always claims that you shipped him 1 solid gold Cadillac short. They're gaming the system trying to get money out of you. And there are not a lot of these people, but 1, 2, 3% of the customers are not above beyond being exploitive in playing those kinds of games. Another way of getting different views on this is if you do it by territory. Not only can you see the customer names that pop up that are good targets, but you also can look at the credits divided by transactions for a sales territory and rank the salespeople from high to low. And you find most of the salespeople are kind of right there in the average for the whole company, but you may find 1 out of 10 sales guys has got 2 to 4 times the ratio. And you have to say, what's going on with this person? Is he just disorganized? Is there some sort of systematic misunderstanding? In some cases, the guy could be a bit of a gamer. He quotes a low price to a customer to get an order, writes it up at the normal price. When the customer says, hey, where's the price? He says, oh, I'll give you a credit for that. Somebody must have changed that on me on the inside. So he's playing a game there, and it's creating credits. And, but we ask 5 whys, and you'll get down to the real problems and the real solutions for helping that salesperson get back, to average or better performance. So, and then another quick and dirty approach to get a perspective on warehouse mispicks is if you keep a simple log of mispick items, it doesn't take but 20 or 50 entries before you start to see that hey, why do we have so many mispicks on this one category of item or this one area? And you go out and you look around in the physical location and you realize that there's a number snafu. If you sell items that are small and precious per pound, they may be in bin boxes where you have item code locations, and one set of boxes ends with digit 4, but coming the other way is another set of boxes where the last digit happens to be 4. And when a picker is getting that area, they're looking for that last digit, and if they overrun the box, they'll pick from the other last digit 4 box. So you find those oddball matches in the warehouse and you change them. Or you go and you realize that the people who are trying to pick are trying to read a label that's got a lot of information on it, and it's very difficult to try to really, in a sense, decode what it's saying. So maybe the system there is to teach the people who are picking how to really read and decipher the code and notice the one little detail that makes the big difference. Sometimes you can come up with visual structural ways, color coding and so forth, that help. You'll come up with a creative solution is the point. So those are kinds of things. You also find that a lot of errors happen in the warehouse because people have put a whole box of stuff in the wrong place, and pickers will then come and pick one at a time from that location because it's the right location. So one wrong put away could create 8, 12, 14, 50 missed picks down the road if pickers are picking by location number. You also will find that a certain number of errors are going to happen in the warehouse just because of haste. Because people are not cross-trained and interchangeable, or because there's been too much turnover, people don't know well enough in a consistent, disciplined way how to pick. You can throw technology at the problem, but I usually find that technology or tools, and if you have world-class carpenters, you're still not going to get the best value out of the tools. So we have to go back and solve these problems in a manual world, and then the tools that we may put in as far as barcode picking and so forth can work even better. Things that you want to do to avoid backlash: don't put a chart on the wall and say, here's how many errors per thousand we're making this week, and we're going to chart this every week, and if it gets below some magic milestone number, we're going to have a little party, or everybody gets X bucks a bribe. Because what will happen is the numbers will improve right away because everybody's anxious for about a week or two, and they do their job, and then they spend a little extra time and energy double checking. So because of double checking efforts, errors may actually go down a little bit. But then, people get tired of that and they go back to the normal pace of the race, and errors start to creep back up. So what happens is you were lower and now you're starting to creep back up. You feel kind of bad about yourself, which adds to the problem. And then people even will start to cheat. I one time was coming out of the bathroom and I overheard over file cabinets that an inside salesperson say to the customer, okay, look, you're right. I mispriced that, but I don't want to issue a credit because it's more paperwork for me and you. Why don't the next time you need an order, call me and I'll give you a deal the next order to make up for the difference. In other words, the guy was starting to try to play little games to compensate for the fact that he didn't want errors being credited to his department or his number. So that makes people a bit uptight and defensive. You can keep secret numbers and look at charts, and when the trend looks good and there's structural reasons why numbers continue to drop, you can go ahead and put that up. But don't try the instant bribe, it's going to work kind of thing. Also, it helps if everybody understands what's in it for me economics. If you look at the total cost of the error, it's a lot bigger than people think. Let's go back and remember that the average IDA distributor and their profit reports had about an $80 average cost per transaction. So in this next slide, if a customer or a company XYZ has an $80 cost per transaction and they ship the wrong stuff, they now have to reverse the process and bring that stuff and put it back. So it's $80 to ship something out, it's pretty much $80 to go get it and return it. And then you've got to reship the right stuff. So that's 3 transactions, so now we're $240. But there's soft costs too, because there's a little bit of morale drain on people, because who wants to take care of errors? The customer is upset, and maybe that was the last bad service thing that caused them to switch to another competitor. Or certainly when salespeople go out and try to say, hey, why don't you buy more from me? Why don't you give me last look and a little bit more? Or why don't you marry us on a win-win system contract basis? They don't have a credible case. Instead, they're kind of got their fire hose, they're doing damage control. So I could build a case that a mistake really costs about 7 times the cost of doing it right the first time. So there's a huge economic return long-term for everybody in the company if we can solve this problem. So I think that it's important to realize that this is not a quick race. It's a very steady marathon kind of event. You know, and it's not to say that, you know, people who are watching this video aren't good service providers. But to be distinctively great and make a big issue out of it is 6 times harder to achieve than just achieving, you know, good. I mean, better than 75, 80% of the people out there, that's tough. But to be better than 95, 96% of the people out there, that's 6 times tougher. And I think that as you break this big problem down into individual categories, you just sort of tackle one category at a time, because it's going to help the service manager get their feet and their systems and so forth. This is not meant to be a gotcha program where, okay, aha, you're making mistakes, one more mistake, you're out of here, as opposed to we all make them. But systems are our friends, and as we rethink our systems and our education and our cross-training and things like that, these errors are going to melt away. Here's some key summary points. Zero Errors is the only program I know that will lower your costs, simultaneously lower your costs, increase your service value dramatically, increase morale dramatically, and it's totally within your control. It's within your 4 walls. I don't care what the economy is doing out there. This is something you can do inside your business. And lastly, you can put a dollar guarantee or teeth into it, which gives an enormous amount of pride to everybody and helps to make it an issue in the marketplace. Second key point is keep it simple, stupid, error analysis and solution. There are companies that have spent millions of dollars trying to do Baldrige Award campaigns to win a trophy and be ISO 9000, 9001, 2. And I'm not saying that it's a good or bad discipline. I just think that it's largely expensive and over-engineered for your typical small distribution center. You're going to need a service manager who's going to be kind of the catalyst, the cheerleader, and the systems rethinking person. And it's going to take a fair amount of flexibility and open-mindedness on everybody's part. But again, if you look at that North Star, you look at the total economics that's involved, you realize what's in it for you, you say, you know what, this is worth doing. Thanks. A universal law of customer service is if a customer wants something at a certain time, they want it at a certain time. If we're going to have 100% on-time delivery, that means everything upstream in the order fulfillment process, in a sense, also has to be on time. So it creates a total process challenge. And you'll find that different niches that you may serve actually have different nuances as far as what they think is on time. In past modules, I've talked about under one distributor roof, they'd have one group of customers who want to call late in the day, get it first thing in the morning. Then another group of guys that would call and say, I want it when I want it, which could be anywhere from next day to a week later. They had yet another group of customers who wanted to call 15 minutes in advance to confirm that the company had the item in stock and that they were going to come down and pick it up. And when they picked it up at the counter, they want to get in and out in 5 minutes or less. 3 different on-time realities. And when you think about on-time realities for customers, you want to make sure that you think about, how valuable is it to them. Sometimes it's not a big deal, sometimes it's critical. So particularly in those businesses or channels where you've got customers that it's critical, it's a real issue to fight for. If you look at the biggest causes of why things are late, companies tend to design or evolve a standard process for how we do orders around here. And it's geared towards the original segment of customer they go after. It also could be geared around delivery realities. For example, if you ship stuff via UPS, the UPS truck stops at your place for all the pickups at the day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you have a cutoff for noon for next day delivery. It could be, and then when you look at the order fulfillment capacity, how many orders can we have, it tends to be geared towards an average day's volume. We're not going to staff up with lots of people at every station so that if we get a surge of orders that's 20-30% above the average, we can take care of it readily because most people are sitting around idle for the other 20-30%. So that means when we do get surges, we tend to haste makes waste. We make mistakes, or people get put on hold and they go somewhere else and call another supplier, or we just make errors. And so whether it's because there's a surge, or a few people get sick in a thinly populated branch, these are problems that cause things not be delivered on time. Let's look at a case study in more detail. Here's a company where a surge comes through every afternoon from 3 to 6, and the idea is, how do we get this pig going through the order fulfillment pipeline on time? So we're going to redesign the systems. We're going to cross-train employees downstream to hop on the order surge and then ride it all the way down. So we'll have some warehouse people actually taking simple, non-technical demand orders when they first come in, but when the surge is into the warehouse by 4 o'clock, we'll have inside salespeople, when the phones stop ringing at 5, out there in the warehouse working and packing, shipping, wherever they can help out. Now, in this situation, you first of all have to know the pattern existed. So you start to keep a log of when do orders come in, and you'll find real quickly patterns emerge. And sometimes there are little seasonal patterns and so forth. Sometimes a distributor's terms, 2% tenth of the following month, approximately, for example, would mean people would wait to the first day of the month and order like crazy so they can go 40 days before they pay their bills. So sometimes your terms, while they had a reason a long time ago, these days they could cause artificial surges, and maybe you want to rethink those and just go to 2% 15, net 30, or something like that. So anyway, keep a log, see what's going on, and then start to rethink the system. So for example, in the case study we're looking at, they said, all right, we're going to have a phone system where customers can dial directly into inside sales. When the last person is busy, the overflow automatically goes to a quarterback person who takes the phone call and says, hi, the normal inside salespeople are busy. Do you need technical help, or do you know exactly what you want with code numbers? Now, this distributor did a great effort of putting their code numbers everywhere so that a lot of customers were habitually ordering that way. If they know exactly what they want with code numbers, it goes into the warehouse, or a bullpen is set up where 4 inside-out warehouse guys out of 10 had been cross-trained to take these orders, put them in the computer, create the pick ticket, and get on with the job. If the person needs technical advice or help, then there is a designated overflow person 1, 2, 3, 4 for that. And every day of the week at this particular branch, a different salesperson was scheduled to be in the office doing paperwork from 3 to 5, 6 o'clock at night in case they were needed for overflow calls. Purchasing people were cross-trained, the service managers were cross-trained. The key thing, though, is the last person would get an overflow call, once a week. If they started getting 2 a day, it was probably time to put another full-time inside salesperson on the desk during the crunch time. So what you've created is an accordion effect where we can keep expanding as much as orders coming in, so no customer is ever put on hold. And then through cross-training, that accordion effect can happen all the way through, even to delivery on the trucks if necessary. Now, when it comes to trucks, let's look at this slide. Some people may work with UPS, and they have their own accordion system, which is great. If you have your own trucks that are doing delivery, and you say, why don't you have 100% on-time delivery? If all the stuff gets to the loading dock and orders, it's just a trucking problem, why did all the orders not get delivered the next day? The superficial causes might be there was traffic, the truck broke down, we were short-handed, the driver was slow. We had 110% orders to deliver for 100% capacity. I think the real causes are, first and foremost, just turnover and therefore inexperience. If you pay the most to get the most, expect the most, and cross-train drivers on different routes, things go a lot better. I've seen rookie drivers who don't have their habits down, and they leave hand trucks, all around town for the first week or two. I've seen rookie drivers who just got their commercial driver's license, and because they don't want to kill the freight dock, the delivery dock, or the back of their truck, they take an extra 10 minutes to back up and park the truck exactly right to unload. I've seen, because they're rookie drivers, they don't know not only where the exact drop-off location is for regular customers, but the secret back door to how to do it, or if traffic happens here, where to go as far as shortcuts or long cuts or whatever. So the key there is preventative measures. If you have really good drivers who are totally responsible for not just their truck, but the total fleet on an annual cost, running cost per mile basis, and do preventative maintenance on your trucks, those kind of things. And then on top of it, you're not giving any thought to surge management. Let's say that you've got this wonderful group of guys so that traffic, truck failure, short-handed, slow driver problems disappear. You still could have 125% orders to deliver the next day, with 100% truck capacity. You've got two choices. You can do triage and say, who are A, B, C customers, and get those deliveries off and call the Ds and say, you know what, I'm sorry, you're not going to get your order tomorrow because we just have run out of truck space. Here's what we can do alternatively, type of thing. So you could do that and make your weakest, poorest customers suffer all of the overage problems, and the best customers, target customers, never would notice. Or you have to have a seamless situation where as you see a surge building, you could say, how do we have an extra truck and an extra driver on hand, whether it's on our payroll or we outsource that capability. Now, if you think you can or you can't, you're right. If you look at national role model examples, certainly FedEx, UPS, and Schneider International, which is now the largest privately held, fastest growing, on-time delivery truck company in the country, based out of Wisconsin, they've figured these things out. I know one company that said, the truth of the matter is trucks is a different world than what I'm doing. It's not my core skill or capability. I'm going to outsource it. And so they talked to a bunch of local trucking companies, and they cut a deal where the trucking company, local trucking company, actually bought the trucks and the drivers, leased them back to the company, and all the drivers were thrilled because in a trucking company, everybody knows, talks trucks, they did a better job of managing, maintaining the trucks, there were chances to be promoted from within, whatever. It's a total truck culture. So all of a sudden, instead of having kind of what the drivers thought was a perceived dead-end kind of job, they really were with a great organization. But in every case, I've not seen a situation where you were able to have 100% on-time delivery by paying average wages to truck drivers. In every case, they've said, we're going to make a high-performance, forward investment, pay more, get more, expect more, train more, cross-train, give them total fleet economics, make them think in terms of 100% on-time delivery, surge management problems. In other words, let's think of systems and concepts and big picture and big long-term economics. One last case study for surge management has to do with, or on-time delivery has to do with counter sales. Most people who are in contracting supplies will find that they have 3 surges a day at the counter. The biggest is first thing in the morning. There's a little boomlet maybe at lunch hour, and there's a smaller one at the end of the day. If you think in terms of time is money and it's more of a C-store sell, you then would say, all right, let's log the results and see what goes on. For example, in Phoenix, Arizona, a client found that 70% of all their customers came between 7 and 9 during the cooler months. And during the 4 or 5 months that were just hotter than Hades out there, starting in May through September, the contractors wanted to come in earlier and work earlier. So they opened up at 6 or 5:30 or something like that. But when you find out what honks these people off, it's I call and you say you have it and I get here and you don't. And the second then is I get here and I wait in line forever. For me, time is money. So they made a decision to go after the time is money productivity crowd, and they charge high prices. And the customers grumble about the high prices. And they say, if there's any place else you can get faster, better fill rates, turnaround time, and in and out 5 minutes guaranteed, or we give you $10 right on the spot, go to them. Some people grumble and leave, but 20% of the guys who do 80% of the local installation work all come to this person because time is money. So, and one of the ways they solved the problem was they actually hired part-timers first thing in the morning to help take care of that big surge. So those are examples of surge management. And I think from a conclusionary viewpoint, you have to realize that if we are going to have 100% on-time delivery, it's going to mean a lot of change for all of us, but it's a way of creating a huge, important service issue, service difference, which is going to allow us to win the service retention economic game. It's a key part of our whole high-performance agenda here. The Learn and Earn certification is a tie-in because it can't happen unless we have people downstream and offstream hopping on pigs and riding the surge through wherever it may be happening. And as far as interdepartmental friction and rules and regulations and so forth, they have to go, or the loyalties have to be to making the process metrics happen first, and then we'll worry about little departmental problems second. We have to shift our loyalties that way or it won't work. There are probably a fair amount of concerns with this kind of a program, and people getting involved in different departments and so forth. So I'm sure you're going to have a very ripe discussion session on it. Thanks. In past modules, we've talked about learn and earn certification, the idea that to have 0 errors, 100% on-time delivery, we have to have perfect interchangeability of people so that errors don't go up when an amateur tries to do somebody else's job. We can take care of surges, that the inherent flexibility of people who know everybody else's job creates premium productivity, which will support premium wages. This particular module is a how-to case study on how to tie all these factors together and actually make a program that will work. But if you thought about how would you get from average wages to premium wages, I could give you 3 general scenarios. First, the company could say, well, all right, warehouse guys, you're making the average wage, let's call that 100% of the average wage, and FedEx and UPS pay $150, so we're going to raise everybody to pick a number, I don't know, 130, 140, something, 150. And so now you're all real happy, and you're all going to stay here, and you're all going to learn, right? And then we'll sit around with our fingers crossed and hope the productivity emerges. Well, first of all, the company's taking all the upfront risk, and everybody's happy, but everybody's just going to keep doing what they're doing in the absence of North Stars and plays to get there, and formal certification training programs. Nothing's going to happen. So you need all the plays and stuff to get from point A to point Z, and the company's going to say, wait a minute, why should I take all the risk? The flip side is we could say to all employees, I'm the owner, company profits stink right now, so here are the North Stars, here are all the plays, it's going to take extra effort on your part, but have faith, because when we get to the new land of higher productivity and profits, then I'm going to give you raises, trust me. And in a sense, we're asking the employees to be the risk takers, the entrepreneurs in this thing, which really I don't think is appropriate. The shareholders should be the greater risk takers in this deal. So we need a third middle way where everybody signs up, everybody's in it together, everybody's got a little skin in the game, everybody's got a little sweat in the game anyway, and so we co-invest in this together. So I'm going to offer this next slide kind of a balanced approach to solving this problem. We're going to call this a game, the learn and earn game, and we're going to look at factors. We're going to start on the right-hand side with new numbers. If we say, all right, our gross margin dollars generated annually per warm body is X, and we want to get that up 30, 40, 50, 100% to 2X eventually. And here are the service metrics for our number one customer. We're putting them on the wall. We're going to measure them every day. We're going to try to figure out how to get 0 errors, on-time delivery, higher fill rates, etc. So do whatever you have to make these things happen. These are our North Stars. Another North Star is here are our 5 most profitable customers or our 5 target accounts. The answer is yes, whatever they want. Make service heroics happen. So that's one thing, but then we have all these plays that Bruce is offering on this tape series. He's got the 0 error play, he's got the 100% same day receiving, the small order solution, he's got target account heroics. Now if we do these plays, in theory, some of these are going to create profits right away. In other words, if we can and/or slack. In other words, if we don't have to work as hard because errors disappear, we have extra time and energy to watch videos every lunch, for example, with free sub sandwiches and a soft drink. So it's going to create both profits for the company and slack for the employees. The employees are going to invest their slack time in learning new skills. The company is going to invest some of their profits in some of the other costs, like this video and having the video sessions and the upfront costs for service managers, things like that. So then we can forward and invest into the learn and earn game. Now the last on the top central box you see wage curve for job niche. And remember, when it comes to wages, there are 2 boundary lines. One is the company doesn't have to pay any more than what your next best alternative is. So the marketplace sets that average wage, and they can try to get by skinny it a little bit lower, but they have turnover. They're not going to get good people, or the people whose hearts, minds, and souls are in the company. But at the high end, that is set by service productivity numbers. So you could assume that as more and more people learned and earned and certified over time, that because their flexibility would provide more productivity, the productivity would happen. Does it happen simultaneously, or how much does it lag? Who knows? Who cares? I'm going to suggest a learn and earn certification program in the warehouse, for example, that could take anywhere from 12 to 30 months to significantly happen. But over that period of time, people in the warehouse could go from 100% average wage to 150% of the going wage. But during that same time, all these plays would have kicked in and productivity would have gone up. So there'll be a rough match of the two things. Let me share a case study with you. I got involved in a huge turnaround problem. It was a very sick company. They had followed financial management down the tubes. I mean, hire them cheap, work them hard philosophy, to the point where they were paying warehouse people about 70% of the average wage in the metro marketplace, for which they were getting high school dropout kids. These are 17, 18, 19-year-old children who were riding bikes to work because they didn't have enough money to afford any transportation, or they were trying to carpool it with friends of theirs who were big flakes, and half the time the friend wouldn't show up to pick them up because they forgot or they were hungover or something. And they didn't have any work ethic because they never learned how to work before. You know, you get what you pay for. And so what I did was there were 10 people in the warehouse, including one of them was a full-time inspector and there was a full-time manager. I mean, this guy couldn't pull any orders because he was so busy babysitting all these guys, trying to get them to work or get back from breaks or whatever. He really wasn't, he just had a whip and a spear kind of thing. So what I did was I looked at all the people based on age and experience and so forth, and I just let the bottom 3 guys go and gave the other 7 guys 30% wage increases. So I said, you know, you're now making average wages, and the 30% of the warm bodies I let go were not 30% of the net productivity. These were the guys that didn't show up. If they did, they didn't do anything, and worse yet, if they tried to do something, they made errors, which is 7 times the cost of doing it right the first time. If they did it right the first time, it's because you helped them. So for 30% wage increase, let's see if we don't miss them. They didn't miss them at all. Now, the next thing is, how are we going to get from average wages to 150% of the going wages? I put a chart on the wall. I identified, you know, a bunch of categories they could work at and so forth. And I said, I'm going to weight these things so as fast as you can get in this job, do it for some period of time. Practical experience is important. Take a written and or oral test and have people around you and in different departments where you get stuff from or hand stuff off to say, okay, they think you're a 10. We're going to give you a wage increase right there on the spot. I also will go ahead and start recruiting, you know, new warehouse people, offering to pay 110 to 140% of the going wage just for them to show up day one. And you might think that's not fair, but these are people who are going to be older, wiser, experienced. I have to pay for their track record. And if any of you want to, in a sense, reapply for these high starting wage jobs, get your resume together, etc., and see if you can qualify. But if you do, sure, I'll move you to 120, 130, but then I expect you to certify faster than ever before, because the more I pay, the more I expect. So that was the way I sort of dealt with that problem. And I pointed out I didn't want to be, from now on, in a reactive hiring mode where I was down 2 bodies, desperate to hire somebody. I wanted a full complement of people with other great prospects on file. So I was going to be continuously recruiting and looking for great people. I just was going to warehouse them at somebody else's payroll until we had an opportunity or an opening. But this also put pressure on the people because they realized, you know, he may want to go to 5 people, making 150% of the going wage, because he's not going to need a full-time inspector and a full-time manager. You know, if everybody is cross-trained flawlessly, certified at everything, not turning over, etc. Not that one of the 5 wouldn't be a lead warehouse manager kind of guy. And the warehouse manager and the inspector would love to be on a team of 5 making 150% of the going wage, because that was a lot more money than they were making. But it was a traumatic kind of thing. So at any rate, we said, let's go. Here's some more assumptions. I assume that, you know, as we cross-trained over a period of time, and the way I set it up, I think the original theory, if you could go rotate through all the different jobs, having to work 3 months here, 2 months there, 1 month here, 2 weeks here, there, whatever. I think initially it was like a 12-month program, and eventually expanded to become theoretically a 29 months you could certify at everything, an expanded program. But during that time, I gambled we could get our errors from 70 per thousand down to below 10. And we did. We very quickly, a few structural changes got it to 35. Very quickly, a few structural changes got to 15. Then the step down increments got tougher and tougher, but we kept grinding away and eventually got it down to estimated 1 per 1,000 mistakes. Also, because we structurally invested in improving fill rates for our number one niche, our order size economics went up. We put the smaller program in. That helped enormous as far as activity in the warehouse. Cycle count accuracy, went to work on that and made that happen. So where is it? I don't know kind of stuff disappeared, melted away. So all these things created enormous amounts of slack for us just to take care of more profitable, productive orders. So yes, productivity was going up markedly over this period of time for the people in the warehouse. And I did expect that along the way there would still be departmental squabbles along the process chain. But if we kept talking about it's a team, here are the end of the process metrics, let's keep our eye on the North Star, do you have a next best alternative, which they didn't, we could continue to make progress. Here is the program we did. Initial chart on the wall had these functions. You could receive it, think about chronologically. You receive stuff, then you put it away, then you have to cycle count to make sure the right stuff's in the right place, the right quantities, then you could pick it, then you could ship it. And we had 4 other miscellaneous kinds of jobs that these warehouse people did. Over time, we actually expanded this to about 15 categories. So we continued to design, delegate, engineer more value into it. And then we weighted the functions sort of arbitrarily. We said, what's the most important job? We figured receiving and putting away is very critical, because if you put it away in the wrong place, you can't find it, or you have a lot of mispicks down the line. And so the things that were weighted more as far as giving premium wages, the 50% premium over the average wage, if the average was sort of an arbitrary start point. We allocated merit increases, and then we also weighted how many months we thought you had to practically do that job before you then took your test. And so you can see the initial program took about 12 months. Now, visible reminders, I put a big chart on the wall with all these things, and across the top were all their names. So let's fill in checks and give merit increases right on the spot. I had a big binder with a lot of tabs that was empty. And I said to each person, each job, your first job is to create a description of what you do, how you do it, flow charts, things like that. In a sense, come up with a test, too, for what you would have to know to really do this job well. If you need help, talk to people that you report to, etc. But most of these guys were not really paper report writing kind of analysts. They were warehouse guys and kids at that. So we had to get a catalyst, and really our first service manager was the person who really helped put all these things together. And then people got very anxious about taking the test. And I said, look, don't panic. We'll sit together, we'll brainstorm on what kind of questions you'd have to know on a test, and we'll simulate a little bit. We'll modify it, whatever. And when the test comes, if you're not a great reader, it can be read to you, and you can orally respond. So in a sense, it can be an oral test, written test. We're flexible. But what's important also is the people around you have to say, the guy's a 10. Not just technically speaking, but in a teamwork give and take way too. We don't need any prima donnas around here. It's a give and take, flexible organization. And when they saw me hiring 1-2 new people at premium wages, they said, well, wait a minute, how can you bring a guy in here at 130% of the going wage? Are you going to give him 50% more on top of that? I said, no. I've prepaid him for some of his merit increases. He has to now certify at all the same things you do, preferably even faster than you might. And when he does certify, passing the test, we're going to give him 2/5 of what the normal wage increase, because he's already been prepaid 3/5. So he'll still get to 150% of the going wage when he certifies. People said, well, yeah, wait a minute, what if we max out? It's amazing how quickly people sort of anticipate the vision and want more, sort of assuming they're even going to get to the vision. And I said, well, wouldn't that be nice to have that problem? But I said, here's what's going to happen. One scenario would be, if you do get to the point where you're a black belt 10th degree warehouse guy, you're getting paid 150% of the going wage, because you're cross-trained, you have a lot of inherent variety in your business. You have a lot of camaraderie and team belonging feelings up and down the line as far as your service process. You've got bragging rights in your community with your friends and family as far as we got the best service in the industry. that's not a bad job. You may decide, I like this job, I want to hang on to it because what's my next best alternative? However, I'm not ever going to say we couldn't pay 180%, because if we can theoretically keep pushing more responsibility, more value added, and create more productivity per warm body, in theory, we'll try to pursue that. Rather, what I think is most likely to happen is if somebody gets to that point and they still want to grow and go, this company will be expanding so rapidly. Ideally, we would like to promote from within whenever we can. And we'll have new job opportunities that come up, and you may want to be willing to do those jobs, but it could be in something like purchasing or inside sales. Historically, you would have said, that's not who I am. I don't have the confidence to do that, and we might agree. But if you learn how to learn, maybe for the first time in your life, and you achieve black belt 10th degree status, you're now promotable not because of what you know in the warehouse. That's nice. But you're promotable because you can jump in a new deep end and figure out how to swim in that area and make that go too. So that would be a possibility. I might add that as a result of that, this is 18 years has gone by since this first turnaround story, and the client has now got many locations, and everybody in the warehouse still talks, and some of them got pictures of guys who started off in the warehouse X years ago, and now these guys are vice presidents for service manager for the whole chain, they're branch managers, they're service managers. They've promoted, significantly up the organization. These are the heroes for today's warehouse people who realize, this is not just a job, it's a career, but it's okay to be black belt 10th degree warehouse guy also. So let's look at a summary slide here. Key points to remember. Distinctive service requires cross-training. For that to happen, everybody has to co-invest. The companies have to spend time on training, and redundant efforts, have service manager upfront investment, but employees are going to have to invest their time, sweat, and their egos to try new stuff, to fall on your face, get up, try and make a good mistake, learn again, try again smarter. That's important. We have to match wage growth with productivity, so we'll create a game that does that on a rough basis over a 12 to 24 month period. And a big assumption here is that we are going to make all the productivity plays that we've covered in this video series happen. And we can do it if we're all willing to work. Thanks. To get the idea of the impact of breakthrough service or heroic recovery service across, I'm sure most of you really know good service when you see it or experience and know bad service. And I'm sure if you thought about it, some of you have had some or all of the following scenarios. One scenario is you get poor service, you go and you complain, and they're totally indifferent to it, and worse yet, they say, oh, well, then you have to go to this other department where, you have to wait in line for 2 hours, and they're going to tell you to come back. It's terrible to get a solution. As a result, you have said, you've vowed in your mind, I am never going to use these guys again, and I'm going to tell every friend I ever run into, don't use those guys. The most powerful form of negative advertising you can have out there. Conversely, you may have had a scenario where you had a poor service experience, and you went back and said, hey, look what happened, and they've gone, oh my gosh, I see what you're talking about. Holy smokes, let me take care of this and give you some whipped cream on top or a lollipop or a special coupon good for an extra 20 bucks. But the effect was, wow, gee, they really care. I was so taken by that heroic recovery that I would continue to use these people. And not only that, I would say to other people, that's a good service organization. You ought to use them. You probably also have had experiences with some companies where you really take them for granted. They give you consistently great service to the point where you've never had a bad service experience that you can recall. So it's just kind of out of sight is out of mind. And maybe you didn't really, you keep using them, but when it comes to telling their friends to use them, you wouldn't go out of your way to do it. If somebody asked, you'd say, oh yes, they're good. I use them on a regular basis. But you don't get that motivated, hey, let me tell you about a great service experience I've had. And then you probably have had a situation where you go to some place and say, look, I'm in a jam. I have an airplane ticket and it's a non-refundable whatever, and my kid is sick, and I know you're supposed to, but could you cut me some slack? And maybe they do. And so you are appreciative for something extra that they did that they didn't have to do. So I would call that a sort of an extra service heroic, if you will. So with that background, our agenda for this particular module is to first of all look at the statistics and economics of heroic recoveries. Then we're going to look at the mechanics of how do you do a heroic recovery. Then we're going to look at some sort of personnel training issues as far as heroic recovery. And then just talk briefly about breakthrough heroics for target accounts. So let's start off by looking at a slide that talks about the statistic and economics for heroic recoveries in restaurants. It turns out that in all service businesses, if a customer experiences bad service, you get 120% of their attention. In other words, if we give people perfect service, they tend to take that for granted. But if we give them bad service, they wake up, they look at it, they put a spotlight on it, and they say, hey, buddy, what are you going to do about this bad situation? If you don't take care of the problem right there in the spot, in the restaurant business, they estimate that 19 out of 20 customers will get up and pay their bill, and they will leave, and they'll never come back. Only 1 out of 20 will actually complain to the manager about slow food, surly waitress, fly in my soup, whatever the problem is. And just 19 quietly leave. Those 19 then will go and tell 12 of their friends, don't go to that restaurant, there was a fly in my soup. And who knows, after a while the rumor is dead rats in the drinking water or something. And it turns out statistically that 15% of the population, if you give them a bad service experience, they just love to complain and whine. They won't tell 12 of their friends, they'll tell 23 of their friends. So you've got a misguided missile all around town, torpedoing your business. So what you want to do is to say, if somebody came and complained, and I spent time and energy to solve that, what's the cost of the cure? But don't look at it versus how much margin did I have in the meal, or how much margin do I have in this order for which I have a mistake. I have to look at the cost of the cure versus the lifetime value of this customer continuing to give me all their business for the next 20 years, and throw in the added power of positive testimonials. Use those guys, they're great, as opposed to having them bitch to everybody about don't use you. When you look at that, you realize that spending money on heroic recoveries is like really super focused advertising dollars. You're basically advertising to a current customer, in a sense, keep using me forever and tell your friends to keep using me because I do heroic recoveries so well. So that's, if you look at it from that economic viewpoint, there's a huge return on your investment for doing these heroic recoveries. Now the question is, how do you do one? These are the steps. Whichever person bumps into the disgruntled customer owns the problem. You're a truck driver, you're pulling up and somebody bitches about the way the box is rumpled or whatever. The truck driver owns that problem. They're not supposed to say, oh, I see what you're talking about. I'll go talk to my supervisor and maybe somebody will get back to you in a few weeks about, your crumpled box. That person right there in the spot has got to have the power and the education to make some sort of heroic recovery commitment happen right there. They own it. They have to do it. None of this passing it off to other departments kind of stuff. Secondly, when a customer says, here's the problem, we cannot nitpick them. We'll say, well, wait a minute, that's not exactly the way it is. You're sort of pitching it all or nothing, black or white. It's kind of gray here. Maybe you can take a little personal responsibility for this misunderstanding. If you try to reason with a customer who's upset, it's gas on the fire. So the best thing to do is just say, you know what, you are 100% right. We are wrong. I want to affirm that, and I want to say right now, I am terribly, sorry about this. And here's what I'm going to do right now to take your pain away, solve the problem to your satisfaction, and really to your super satisfaction, to the hope so that you will be happy and have no qualms about continuing to do business with us again and even refer customers, other customers to us. So you then do your heroic recovery. Now ideally in an office environment, if something happens, it's good to have a grease board typically between the inside sales desk and the warehouse where you post 10:10 in the morning, who the customer was, what the problem is, and you have 2 check marks. One is for the heroic recovery was done. A second check mark is we went back and we rethought our systems and our education and our understanding and so forth amongst ourselves to make sure if this kind of problem should come up again for this customer or other customers, it won't happen. So we're trying to use mistakes as catalysts for continue to retune, refine, improve our great service machine. And ideally, there might even be a third check where the service manager might call back a day or two later just to say, hi, I'm calling back to make sure that everything with our recovery was A-OK, and you still would feel happy about doing business with us and would not have any qualms about telling other people to use us. Because if you don't, what else can I do? So those are the steps and the key guidelines for doing heroic recovery. Now, this raises an issue of, in a narrow sense, empowerment. And later we're going to have a module on this just because I didn't plan on it, but we're going to have one. Because it's a widely used buzzword that's sort of misunderstood. But in a very narrow sense of the definition, empowerment would be the Ritz-Carlton hotel chain has empowered their maids to take care of any disgruntled customer right there in the spot, to the tune of they allow them to spend up to $2,000 of the company's time, talent, resource, treasure to make sure that customer is totally happy and satisfied. Now, they don't just turn them loose because they've already done a study and said, how many housekeepers have run into disgruntled customers? And they all raise their hand and they say, well, what was the situation? And it turns out that the kind of situations that housekeepers run into could fall into maybe 3, 4, 5 categories. And you say, all right, if you get a customer who has this kind of a problem, what would be, a proper solution for taking care of it? And, how much would that cost? So they've done some role plays and simulations. So these people aren't just caught off guard and don't really know what to do. They know the steps of the process. They have ideas on what they can do to make the person happy and sort of thrilled even, so that they'll come back again. So with training, you can really pre-anticipate about 99% of the problems that are going to happen. A second thing is that when you go to do a heroic recovery, part of what you want to put in your formula is, when we cause a customer problem, what's the hassle cost? If they've lost a customer who had a lifetime value of $1 million, that's a bigger hassle cost than they've called up and said, everything's cool, except it's the wrong price. Could you make a price adjustment because it's supposed to be on sale? Fine. And you send out a credit, giving them a certain, commemorating to give them another $8. Well, that's more paperwork for those guys at the other end, but it didn't cost the customer, downtime, lost time. They didn't upset their customers, that kind of a thing. So you want to look at the customer niche and decide, when we make mistakes, what kinds of hassle costs are we giving them? Because that will help you decide what's an appropriate sort of gift or icing to give. For example, when Domino's Pizza had built their business on you get it in 30 minutes hot or it's free, after a while, besides getting grief about drivers racing around town and being reckless, they found that a lot of customers, if the pizza got there in 2 minutes, they thought, well, to give me a $25 worth of pizza for free, it's a bigger penalty. It's not fair. It's too much of a penalty for what the infraction was. So they then lowered the deal to not a free pizza, but they said, if it's not there on time, we're going to give you X bucks. Maybe it's $3, $4, $5. And everybody took the $5. But there were people who would say, oh no, I'm not taking this free pizza. Look at this poor little kid delivering the pizza. I want to give him a tip. I want to pay something. So when you get pushback from your customers saying, hey, it's too much of a penalty for the crime you didn't do. So you've got to figure that in. Now, obviously, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to do a little bit of learning, role-playing, and retuning, because a lot of frontline employees feel reluctant about spending extra resources. We had such a culture of don't spend anything, be efficient. This idea of being effusive, apologetic, and so forth is tough. Also, we're going to run into rascals. When I first put in an unconditional, we'll do it or we'll give you money guarantee, I had pushback from managers saying, we have customers who already pretend there's an error in the order to goose us for money. Now we're going to put that up and give them $30 on top of it. I don't think so. In fact, they speculated some of the customers for the $30 guarantee would be induced to start cheating to get the $30. So we did the Rascal Rank Report, which we saw in a previous model, where we ranked all the customers from high to low based on the number of credits they had for a period of time, 12 months ideally, for the number of transactions. and we sorted from high to low by the ratio of credits divided by transactions. That's the column with the little arrow. So at the top of the report, you'll find a customer with just one credit and one transaction over 12 months. So they have a ratio of 100%. The next guy had one credit and two orders for 50%. But look at XYZ. Here's somebody who had 49 credits that were issued to them for 100 transactions we processed. That's 2 a week in a 50-week year. And let's say the whole overall average for the whole company is 1% or less as far as credits divided by transactions. When we looked at the detail, every one of the code numbers for our zero-error coding program was "you shipped me short." So here's a guy who's just playing a game with us, digging us for money. And so you go back to those kind of rascals, we call them, and you basically just say, look, because we can't make it work and it's costing us a lot of money, and you a lot of money because there's paperwork, we're raising your prices, we're cutting, you're putting on COD, we basically price and terms them out of the business so they just get lost. I mean, we almost just say, here's our competitor's 800 number, call them and play games there. Now, if you think that some of these guys could be good customers eventually, most leopards don't change their spots. Secondly, if they tend to be abusive for small change with their suppliers like that, they're abusive with all their stakeholders, and that's not a formula for a good, healthy business ecosystem. They're not growing and going. They're part of the living dead crowd of customers. So you have competition. It's better that they stay totally busy with smaller customers and abusers and so forth. Then the service guarantee can work for the other 95, 6, 7, 8% of the honest, decent business people out there we're taking care of. Some additional things that you might be aware of, when I've put these unconditional programs in the past, some of the surprises have been, first of all, we budget a certain amount of money for coupons we send out that will give you a $30 credit or whatever. And we find it takes a while to get people, frontliners, to go ahead and quickly, easily, almost gleefully say, oh great, I want to give you $30 because this is really focused advertising and you're going to talk about this for the next 20 years. It's the most powerful form of affordable public relations I can get. Another surprise that all the frontliners had is that when they go into the heroic recovery and say, you're right, we're wrong, I am so sorry, here's what I'm going to do, 70-80% of the customers say, oh, hey buddy, don't take it so badly. Look, everybody makes mistakes, and the truth of the matter is, maybe I had a little bit to do with it. These guys actually want to take on part of the personal responsibility for the blame here. So how quickly most customers get very civilized, even generous. And to carry that further, when we go ahead and give away these coupons that they can send in showing they've deducted $30 or whatever the value of the hassle cost recovery icing is, maybe half of them don't get redeemed. And we go back to customers and say, you've got 2 of these things over the last 6 months. Why have you not sent them in? And the typical answers are, your crime does not fit the penalty. In other words, I don't do this in my business. I'd go broke if I have to. You give me better service than anybody else on the planet. The fact that you should even think you have to pay me extra, heck, I should probably be paying higher prices. They don't say that, but that's really all part of what's going on. They're saying, this is, Domino's Pizza, I really want to pay you, type of thing. Part of it is they feel a little bit guilty because maybe they had something to do with the mistake, because often it takes 2 to have a misunderstanding. One guy even said, I like it as a souvenir. I've got it on the wall, and when your competitors come in here and I have a bad service experience, I like to take salespeople by the scruff of the neck, stick their nose in the mangled order and say, see this? I called your company 6 weeks ago and it's still sitting here. If this had happened with, High Performance Incorporated, they would have been out here the next day, this would have been gone, I would have the right stuff, and I have this coupon on the wall. So I want to know, just for starters, where's my $30? And the salespeople, they just slink away. So I'm thinking, my gosh, for what I'm spending on this coupon program, this unconditional guarantee, half aren't being redeemed, I'm still getting the PR benefit, and I'm demoralizing my competitor sales forces, which is not such a bad thing. So moving on, here's some guidelines for breakthrough services. This involves doing heroics for key accounts, that are franchise or target accounts. We know them by heart. Whenever they make an extra request, we just say yes. What's the question? We'll clue the sales rep right away because they want to go back out and say, hey, did you get good service from our company? Oh yeah, man, they saved our rear end. Okay, well, that's why we're the people you want to marry if and when you want to get married. Or, that's good, I want to know I've got that goodwill, because things don't always go perfectly. Someday I may have to draw on that. So we leave that up to the sales rep to go do spin control and get, as much goodwill out of it as we can. If you wanted, you can try to get tricky, but don't get caught up in your underwear. Simple works better. Where you'd say, the kind of breakthrough services we do for these 5 customers would be different than those 5. So if you decide you want to try to differentiate heroic recovery treatment or breakthrough service treatment by strata, do some case studies and make sure you really simulate it and everybody understands. But generally speaking, remember the cost of doing either heroic recoveries or breakthrough services is negligible if you look at lifetime economic value of retaining, keeping, growing customers and having them be activated salespeople for you on a PR basis. And for key summary points, we have to pursue basic service brilliance first and always. Heroic recoveries are nice, icing is nice, but without the cake it doesn't work. Secondly, we have to have faith in heroic recovery cost benefits. The icing that we do on heroic recoveries could vary by strata, but remember, do it with simulated case studies so you're really, everybody's on the same page with that. Terminate the rascals from the rascal ranking report over time so that you don't have any abusive people taking advantage of you. And then when key accounts ask for stuff, the answer is yes. And finally, from your own personal experience off the job, go back to my original scenarios and just let your service experiences be your guide as far as what makes sense. Thanks. In this module, I'm going to try to attack some business speak and address the issue of empowerment. I hadn't intended to do a specific module on empowerment, but as I was brewing this video product, surprisingly, I had a number of people say, oh, empowerment's the key. I'd say, well, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, I don't know, but I know it when I see it. So I thought that I better address it. But in the lineup, I didn't want to put it in early in the video series because it's kind of an abstract concept, and I didn't want to end with it because it is important. So I thought that right after this heroic recovery episode or module, this was probably a good place to do it. So what I'm going to try to do is give you sort of a narrow definition and a broader definition and some tests to see if you really have empowerment working for you. In the last module on heroic recoveries, I mentioned a narrow definition of empowerment where, for example, the Ritz-Carlton was giving a money limit, $2,000, to housekeepers to be able to take care of disgruntled people on the spot. And you could do the same in your business. You could say drivers, inside salespeople, outside salespeople, anybody that has a customer touch point. If anybody calls you with a problem, let's talk about the problems you've seen, put them in cases, what's the solution, and then what is appropriate hassle factor amount. And we could come up with, in a sense, systems and formulas that would do the job. But that's still a rather narrow definition of empowerment. And I would like to now look at a broader form of empowerment, which is on this next slide here. Looking at all these messy, busy boxes, let's start with box 1. If our strategic goals are to take employee discretionary effort, in other words, the advantage we have over our competition is all of our employees real-time can do value-added service things that other companies just can't because they're so hamstrung with bureaucracy and rules and regulations and interdepartmental strife and stuff like that. Secondly, our employees can do this because we've invested a lot in them. They have the knowledge and the skills to do certain things, or certainly just the on-the-moment flexibility. Got a problem, got to be taken care of now. It's me. I'm the only one who can do it real-time, that management doesn't. The third point is the frontliners have to know what's in it for them and want to do it. And then we see as a happy byproduct of these first 3 things, effective empowerment happening around a business in lots of ways. And a test of whether employees are empowered or not is to monitor or listen to what they say to outsiders who say, tell me about your business. And when the employees always use the "this is what we do" as opposed to "well, this is what management is dictating or telling us to do, here's the fad of the month" kind of thing. And when employees speak with emotional commitment and excitement because they know what's right and they have the power to make it right and they know that it's in their best interest, again, heart, mind, and wallet are all in sync with where the North Stars are, that enthusiasm comes across. So those are the acid tests of whether there's empowerment really going on in an organization. Now there are certain tests that you can give because the definition of empowerment is sort of elusive. We just kind of know it or feel it when it exists. But there are some tests that we could look at, and here's some that follow. First of all, they're delegation tests. This is sort of a joke, but in theory, a really good distribution manager, a branch manager, could die in their office. And it might take, a couple days to realize, hey, the guy's dead in his office, because nobody's running in there to say, hey, boss, there's a fire, what should we do about the fire type of thing. There's not all this reverse delegation. They're only working on long-term, proactive, out there in the future kind of things. Probably, a more realistic thing is not the boss dying in the office test, but rather stuff happens spontaneously at the grassroots level, frontline level, and the boss finds out about it later, whether it was successful or not. And in fact, if it wasn't successful, the boss still hears about it because the boss isn't shooting messages that bring bad news. In fact, the boss is saying, whoa, that was a good mistake. Congratulations, let me give you a praising statement. And in Section 5, we'll talk about praising statements and we'll talk about good mistakes. So that kind of behavior would happen. The boss believes in total effective delegation, and we went over this in a previous module where they're saying, it's better to have the employees working 120, 140% hard to make their solution work, and if it doesn't, they learn the lesson, and that's the tuition I pay for them to do it better the next time, than for me to be doing everybody else's job. That frees me up to work on the big long-term stuff. Another test are permission test questions. If you went to rank and file employees and said, do you think you have permission to stop turning cranks furiously and actually think about what's going on, reflect on it, go across departmental lines and collaborate with the people in other departments to follow a customer project all the way through the pipeline to make sure a one-off customer exception solution for a target account happens? Do you have the permission to disagree? If your boss says yada, 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 you say, well, yeah, but I'm sorry, these service metrics had to be met. In other words, I have higher loyalties to the North Star high performance guidelines and strategies and service metrics than I do to playing politics and covering your back and stuff like that. And that's a very tough issue because a lot of people are very political. It's part of the human scene. And we'll come back and look at this values, having loyalty to values and service metrics over politics later on. Here are more questions, which are, do you feel you have permission to try some new stuff? Like, gee, here's a problem. Well, I've seen it before. What's my theory? Why? Get to the root cause. Let's try an experiment, do it, fall on your face forward, that kind of thing. And then lastly, do you feel that you can be who you want to be as long as you get results? There are a lot of companies who are all over people for how they look and the packaging, the superficial stuff, even though the content isn't there. I know Sun Microsystems used to have an official dress code of you have to. In other words, coming naked isn't an option. But that's really all they said as far as dress code. They basically were saying, look, you're adults. You know what's appropriate for the time of the year. You know what's grungy or offensive. You know what's unnecessarily provocative in a heterosexual working environment kind of thing. So you're all adults, you'll figure it out. So that's allowing people to kind of be who they are. And sort of you don't care as long as the numbers are made as far as service metrics at the end of the day. Now, when you look at these test questions, you say, well, that's not our company. And it may never be your company, but although it's a matter of degree on a continuum, if you're one, as far as traditional, hierarchical, by the rules regulations, as opposed to 5 is that dream scenario of super empowered, self-actualizing work environment. If you're moving to 2 or 3 or 4, that's progress. In business, all you got to do is be, one level better than the competition, and you clean up. So first of all, don't think that because it isn't perfect, it isn't better or getting better. I think, though, that it's probably a little bit scary to both managers and employees because it upsets the equilibrium of how we do things. And when we try to do no stuff, it's uncomfortable for everybody. Also, when you upset traditional power politics of daddy knows best, go to the boss, and don't make a mistake because the boss is going to get angry. They shoot people who make, bring bad news kind of thing. We just, it's not functional. It doesn't make a good return on investment, but that's the way it is. And to a certain degree, the employees say, well, I've got painful security. I don't have any risk. I don't have any responsibility. I just show up, shut up, and there's something to be said for that. What do we do about this? It's going to be an ongoing problem. There are no magic solutions for this to go away. But I would say you have to realize that patriarchal return on investment, where the bottom 90% of the IDA distributors are making 7% return on investment average, is far less than high-performance distribution ROI for everybody. So, if we want to have our wishes fulfilled economically and have fun too, and have everybody, all our stakeholders win, we've got to go for the high-performance scenario. Second point is empowerment is obviously very important, but you realize it's a byproduct. You kind of can't mechanically manipulate or make empowerment happen. It's a happy byproduct of putting a lot of other things into practice. And certainly a big part of that is we have to stop doing the little dance between the boss and the subordinate, which sort of seems a little bit like parent-child. And I'll come back and address this yet again in Section 5 in a more focused way. But up to this point in this module and going on to all the way to the end, empowerment is an important underlying theme. So we're not going to forget about it, and hopefully this has helped to at least get a discussion going about how empowered are we or aren't we today, and how can we start moving along the continuum. Thanks. This module is a motivating vision experience, because what we're going to do is assume all the heavy lifting's already been done, but it has to be done. And we're going to assume that we've got all of our service metrics to distinctive levels. We have error rates that are 1 per thousand. Our fill rates are 5.28% or better than our next biggest competitor for our number one niche, 100% on-time delivery, heroic recoveries, those kind of things. Now the question is, the next wave of good problems we have if we get there is, how do we sell this and make it visible? Because services are what are called intangible, things you can't see, and you only know them through experience. And if you keep doing good stuff, people kind of just take it for granted. They don't necessarily appreciate how good it really is and reward it unless you sell it and make the invisible visible. So that's kind of what we're talking about in this module. And the next 3 modules after this also have all to do with how do we leverage this basic service brilliance and get paid for it and rewarded in different ways. Superficially, as far as how you get rewarded, the research will show that all things being equal amongst competitors, if one outfit has distinctive service that's consistently better than the competition in the customer's head, not our own delusional head, then we can typically go out and say, well, look, the competition here is in at, say the margin percent, but let's say they were in at 20% margin. You can typically get last look and 5 to 10% more, or you don't necessarily ask for it, you just charge and you get it. So that would be a 21 to 22% margin. In earlier, the financial section 2 of the video, we looked at the top 10% of the IDA distributors based on performance, and noticed that their margin percent was 32% compared to the average. The bottom 90% were averaging about 24%. So that was a whopping 29.4% premium over the rest of the guys. And I suppose if we had taken a 25-75 split, top 25% of the distributors versus the bottom 75, maybe we would have seen a 7 to 12% premium. Regardless, if you can get last look and a 5 to 10% premium, that will more than double the average distributor's bottom line, because for an extra point or two on the top line, you have no more phone calls, orders, stops of trucks. There are no more costs. Some of the premium margin may go to bonuses for outside salespeople or the like, but most of it's going to go right to the bottom line and make a huge impact there. Now, Why would customers pay a premium? Because, hey, all things being equal, I'll take your service and I want the low price too. Well, we have to make an issue. We have to point out, although our price is higher, because our service is so good, the features of our service lower other total procurement costs of the customer more than the price went up. So it's still the best total economic deal. So by example, in this slide, you'll see a feature is we have highest one-stop shopping fill rates. The benefit to the customer is if they call us first, oftentimes they get everything they want. They don't have to call a second guy to get the balance of what they want. So they only have their shopping time is consolidated. If we deliver everything they want with one stop of the truck, we also have one set of paperwork, so their paperwork gets consolidated. Second point is if we have zero errors, we obviously eliminate their downtime costs, their expediting costs, and hassle costs that go with that. If we have 100% on-time delivery coupled with high fill rates and zero errors, that means customers can start to carry less inventory at their place and have lower holding costs of inventory because they can call us at 5 o'clock at night. It's there the next day because they know we have it because we have such high fill rates that we won't make a mistake. They don't need any buffer stock at their place to sort of insulate themselves from our errors. So that reduces inventory holding costs. And then if they want to, they're so inclined, they could say, you're so good, I would like to sort of negotiate buying all my stuff over a longer period of time in exchange, of course, for lower prices, but also can we work together to routinize the paperwork, take even more errors and more inventory, automate the paperwork with EDI, those kind of things, to continue to lower a lot of the elements of total procurement cost. So if we go out right now and say, hey, we have good service, it will not allow us to get last look at a premium because we have no conviction that we really do. And frankly, the customer says, well, I'll call you on that. All things being equal, I'm going to buy from somebody else because I don't, even though you may think you have good service, in my mind, I think you're all just pretty good. I don't see a difference, so price becomes the differentiator when we're mediocre and the competition's mediocre too. If we do have this great service, now the issue is how do we make the invisible become visible on a very systematic, repetitious sort of advertising marketing basis. And the way you do that is through automated reminders. Here's some examples of them. If you go into a doctor's office, I have never seen a doctor come in sort of grunge clothes. They all come in and they're wearing clean white lab coats to show that it's a clean place. They have a tie on to show they're professional. Their office is very clean, and they even spray antiseptic stuff around to make it smell like it's clean. If you go in their office, it's high theater. They have diplomas on the wall in Latin, and they have big books of medicine everywhere. For all I know, those things that could have been bought from the doctor used to own the office before them. But it looks cool, and you assume they must know all of the stuff that's in all these books. If you go to hotels, they've got little automated reminders everywhere. They fold the toilet paper with an arrowhead, or they put a little strip of paper over the toilet seat, sort of suggesting this is a born-again, virgin clean, toilet seat. It's not, nobody's used it since the maid was here kind of thing. If you go to shops at the airport and you see a big chocolate chip cookie in saran wrap, so you can see the big flat pieces of chocolate are about 1 micron thick, sort of planted on the top, so it looks like it has a lot more chocolate than it does. And a sticker says freshly baked sitting on top. It's very inviting. It makes you think it is freshly baked. In the distribution business, every order that you fill 100%, with a keystroke, an inside sales guy could add a tagline on the invoice saying another 100% filled order from ABC Company. One phone call, get everything you want. Consolidate your shopping time, your paperwork time. We save you money type of thing. You could put in boxes of goods going to customers. You could put little 4x6 catch us doing things right, parentheses, wrong cards, and they could fill in a little form. Not that they would or could, but they're going to look at it and think, well, now that I think about it, these guys are really good, and they throw it away. Unconditional guarantees can be very powerful. We unconditionally guarantee certain things, or we're going to pay you fast, easy, significant money in some way. If you wait a day or two after heroic recovery and you call back, a callback is an automated reminder. It only takes 2 or 3 minutes, but you're showing you really care, and that's as important as confirming that they're still happy and they're going to do business with you. So what you should do is once you have service metrics achieved. Not until then. You then want to start putting these automated reminders in. Over time, you can vary them because after a while, they just become sort of part of the landscape and people ignore them. So you keep sort of varying them to keep arresting people's conscious attention to make them say, oh, now I think about it, yeah, this is really good. And to a degree, you do it until you hear customers grumble. So when you hear some customers say, now, Bruce, you know, I am sick and tired of hearing about how good you guys are. Well, Mr. Customer, is that not the truth? Oh, no, you are, and you know, but I'm just tired of hearing about it. You know, then you know you've arrived. So that's kind of what you want to go is to when people sort of grumble, and you cut back a little bit, and then you come out again with a whole new, you know, raft of variations on, you know, automated reminders to keep reminding them that you have basic service brilliance day in, day out. The unconditional guarantees, you know, here's money certificate kind of things, they work well in a consumer world where you can take it right back to the retail place to buy stuff. It works okay with small businesses where you're dealing with owner-operators because it's their money. They don't work so well with, you know, big industrial accounts and professional PAs. It even smacks a little bit of some sort of bribe or whatever. So, or they've got such a paperwork mill there they can't make adjustments on invoices and so forth. So there you might want to think of other creative ways of providing guarantees. Let's take a closer look, though, at how the whys and how-tos of unconditional guarantees. First of all, we might consider doing it because it gives us an edge. It puts teeth into our service claim. It's a spur, jumping ahead to 3. It kind of motivates and focuses employees because we really don't want to give up that $30. We've got our pride and so forth. If we get there, it gives us bragging rights. And then, as a happy byproduct, we do have perfect service, which is low cost, high value, high morale. And it motivates, this is the most important one, is point 4, which motivates more customers to speak up. Hey, you guys think you're so great? Look, aha, I caught you on this one. You owe me $30. Where's my $30? Hey, here it is. And we give them $30 because we know it's the most powerful form of advertising, PR, return on investment you can have on lifetime value economics. But it also is grist for a mill. We go, oh, well, how did that happen? We go back and look at our systems and we rethink and we retweak them so that kind of error doesn't happen again. Remember the 19 out of 20 people, if they have bad experience at the restaurant, they don't even complain. They just get up and leave and never come back. We want the 19 out of the 20 that are leaving to speak up. At least, if 10, 12, 15 to speak up, we can slam the heroic recovery on them and convert them to a lifetime customer and a positive testimonial customer for us. Some design guidelines. You want to pick service elements that are very important to the customer. 2, they're ones that you can control. For example, 0 errors and on-time delivery, we can control those. To say we're going to have 100% fill rates on inventory is tough to do if you've got 30,000 items, that you're trying to have a 92% effective fill rate on. But you may say there are 10 items or 20 items that you unconditionally guarantee. So pick things that are important, you can control, they're easy to understand and communicate. When you do a guarantee, make it unconditional, no fine print, ifs, buts, whatever. That just leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. And then make sure that the payoff is instant and meaningful. Think of the Domino's guy showing up and he's 2 minutes late and he says, and you say, hey, it's 32 minutes. He goes, great, here's the free pizza. What could be simpler, easier, more dramatic than that? Key summary points. Let's achieve the basic service excellence, and then we have the fun part of putting in the automated reminders and selling our total procurement cost reduction solution. And ultimately, we'll get higher prices from customers because we're still giving the best total procurement cost economic value. Guarantees can work well in consumer businesses and in B2B, business-to-business channels where we're selling small owner-operators. The key questions, though, are can our people sell the story to get first, last look plus a premium, or if the guy says, I don't want to pay a higher price. Oh, well, maybe if you want to pay a lower price, let's get married. How about a win-win integrated sole supply relationship for the long term? And we'll take a look at that in a subsequent module. Thanks. In the previous module that we just saw on getting paid for basic service brilliance, a key concept I kept referring to, and you've heard it before in other modules, is total procurement cost. And the idea is that you can go get a higher price and still be the best total economic value. But total procurement cost is also a tool for explaining some other concepts. So let's look at the agenda for this module. First of all, we're going to take a look at why wholesale distributors actually exist. You know, a lot of the B2B.com stuff was all about disintermediating distributors, the middleman and so forth. But when you have physical goods mass-produced at factories, somebody has to break them down and reassort them and ship them back out. So distribution is forever, but we don't kind of know, most people don't sort of intuitively understand why the distributor exists. So we're going to take a look at that. We'll briefly look at total procurement costs. I could spend a lot more time, but not in the short time I'm limited to in these modules. We'll look a little bit at total procurement cost trade-offs, because there are price traps where you get a lower price, but you're actually paying higher total costs. And then we'll talk a little bit about teaching value buying customers to buy lowest total procurement cost. The best way to get across why distributors exist at channels is to look at pictures. So here's a picture. Let's imagine that we currently are buying from 100 different suppliers, and we have 200 active accounts at a given distribution location. If we didn't exist, and those current suppliers wanted to have a selling relationship with the customers, you could draw lines from all 100 customers to all 200 current customers. So you'd have a zillion lines. In fact, you'd have 100 times 200 lines, actually divided by 2. So this is a simplistic math thing, but you'd have a lot of transactional relationships. But if we put the parasitic inflation-causing middleman in the middle, that is you realize, oh, we just have 100 lines coming in, and we have 200 lines going out. So there are only 300 lines, which sort of suggests there's enormous transactional benefit. And if you actually drew a line down the middle of the chart, you'd realize that on the left-hand side, we exist to lower our suppliers' total selling costs, because when our inside salesperson is taking an order for 3 line items from 3 different manufacturers, they have 3 times the economy of solution that an inside salesperson would have at each one of 3 different suppliers a customer had to call. So we're lowering the total selling service costs, and on the right-hand side, we're lowering total procurement costs, because customers could buy direct and get truckloads, but the cost of doing business with 100 suppliers as opposed to just one, and having to do truckload quantities as opposed to onesies and twosies the way they want when they want, would explode their hidden costs far more than their price savings. Let's look at it another way. By looking at total procurement cost and the 11 elements. Here they are, and what I'm going to do is take a dream scenario. A buyer says to us, hey, you know, I've just figured something out. I'm currently buying from 3 distributors like you. And looking at price, if I decided to give you all of the business, could you give me a lower price on the goods just because it's a volume discount? Let's say artificially we're buying a third, a third, and a third from 3 guys. If you get 3 times the product volume, could you give me a lower price? The answer is sure. Well, and if I made a commitment to buy from you for a long period of time, could you give me a long-term planning cooperation discount, because this allows you to sort of move trucks, fine-tune your inventory better, that sort of stuff? The answer is probably so. The buyer then goes on to say, I've already figured out that if I just call you instead of 3 guys every day or every other day, I've got 1/3 the shopping time, because your truck stops here and it's got 3 times the payload. I've got 1/3 the paperwork to deal with. The reason I want to marry you is because you have the zero error program and a 100% on-time delivery, unconditionally guaranteed. So expediting mistakes, number 4 and 5, they go to 0. And what you're saying is you'll guarantee it, so if there is a mistake, you'll pay me for my hassle cost to effectively zero it out. And now, when you deliver stuff to the back dock, because I'm giving you so much business, do you think your sales rep and your driver could work with my people to make the handoff there a little smoother, easier, take a little cost friction out of that internal handling thing to the resting spot? And because your fill rates are so high, we're going to tune our reorder points so that we can have weekly delivery, so we have less inventory on hand at our plant, so we have much higher turns, but we're still always have it on hand. Our fill rates are perfect. So all the holding costs on the right-hand side shrink to a realistic minimum. So that's how we would work together. Now what we have to do is figure out how can get the customer to the point where they realize all that stuff and really want to do it, as opposed to thinking they can always get a lower price and somehow that's a good value. Part of our selling educational process to get customers to realize TPC are to talk in terms of price traps. A guy says, I can get a lower price, and our response should be, you know what, you can always get a lower price. The problem is, and there's real price savings, the problem is, are you trading off higher lousy service costs? And I'm sure some of you out there in viewer land have gone somewhere to get a lower price, but when you figure the total cost of the lousy service and they didn't have it in stock, it was a long drive time, etc., considering all your time you wasted, it wasn't worth it. Another example of bargain price is a bait and switch. Advertisements are for real low prices. You get out and you find out that, that's for the total stripped down model. If you want what you thought was being advertised, you have to pay for all the extras and then some, because they have to pay for the advertising to get the suckers in there. That's called bait and switch in retail selling. You may get a bargain price, but you have to do business with 2 or 3 suppliers, and so the redundant shopping and paperwork costs more than wipe out the price savings you're getting from the one low price guy. People who go to wholesale clubs but then have to go to the full service grocery store have figured that out. They're saying, you know, I go down there, but I still have to go to the full service place to get the balance of what I wanted. And for the price savings that I'm really not getting, and when I buy there, it maybe isn't worth the 2 trips. You can throw in the fourth kind of price trap too, which is bargain price, huge supply. At the wholesale club, you do get a lower price, but you're buying anywhere from 3 months to 3 years supply, and because you don't think it through, maybe you've got closets full of stuff, and you're stocking out of one item you bought at the wholesale club, but you still have months of supply of other things. So because all the items at the wholesale club don't decline to a reorder point together, because you haven't figured out month's supply, reorder point, reorder quantities, it starts to get out of whack, and you think, forget it, I'm just going to go to the full service place. So we have to understand and teach and sell these types of total procurement cost ideas. Now, when a customer says, I want a lower price, or price is all that matters, we have to be like a good judo expert and say, oh, I love your energy, but why stop at price? Why don't you look at all 11 elements of total procurement cost? Because in fact, if we use that as a checklist, and we looked at the feature benefits of all of our service, you could see how you could, just on an arm's length basis, lower all elements, but if you really want the price to go down, marry us. And then we'll go through another round of fine-tuning, routinization, and all these other costs to really get TPC costs down to the lowest practical level that you can. And they're going to come back with pushbacks like, yeah, but you're trying to pretend I have these costs, but I don't really have these costs. I kind of do them for free, and I'm here anyway, and we got all this fixed overhead. Those are stalls, and you have to hang in there long enough for them to start to realize the true story that you're telling. And if they're a true value buyer, one by one they start to come around. Now, if a customer says, here's last look, meet my price, we've faced this before, this moment of truth before and previous modules. That's where we'd ideally like the salesperson to say, wait a minute, I'm honked off, I want last look and a little bit more for me because of all my value-added annex I've done for the last X months, and I want last look and a little bit more for my service horse I'm riding. But what we should do now is rewind that tape and say that we've worked hard to create basic service brilliance. We've carpet bombed all of our customers with automated reminders. We've been selling, pitching total procurement cost on a simplistic, bargain price, bargain service kind of way. Now the customer comes to us and they're apt not to say, here's last look, meet the price. They may say, here's last look, could you be more competitive? Because over time, they have started to realize and even conceded to us that, you know what, you guys do have the best service value and it does save me headaches, downtime, hassle costs, and so forth. So ideally, that's what's going to happen is we're going to be able to make our stand if we had to, and the customer isn't going to blink and say, fine, here's last look and a premium, or they're going to say, fine, could you just be a little bit more competitive? Here are the key points. There are 2 reasons why wholesale distributors exist, and that is forever for physical goods. If you have a digital product like music, Napster can deliver it to your CD on your PC, and that does do something to guys who make CDs and distributors who deliver to retail stores and retail stores that are loaded with inventory of CDs. And e-tickets in the airline business, that's going to hurt travel agents. But when it comes to physical goods, breaking down truckloads of Pampers to cases and cases to onesies and twosies at retail stores, that's going to be around for forever. So you exist because you lower total selling costs for suppliers, and you exist because you lower total procurement costs at a higher price for the customers you sell. But we have to understand the 11 elements of TPC and sell that transactionally and then systematically when we can. Thanks.